At my daughter's wedding, I was handed a paper badge that read, "Limited Access Guest." It wasn't gold-trimmed like the others. No ribbon, no calligraphy, just thick black text on a flimsy rectangle, the kind you'd stick on a visitor at a warehouse tour. I stared at it confused. Then I felt a hand graze my arm. Deborah, my daughter's new mother-in-law, leaned in close and said with a smirk, "That means no plate." I waited for a wink, a laugh, some hint that it was a joke. But she was already gone, floating back into the crowd like nothing had happened. I scanned the seating chart. My name wasn't on it. Not under family. Not even in the back. The servers moved past me, hands full of champagne and plated salmon, not one glancing my way. I felt the weight of the envelope in my purse. The $7,000 check I had written after months of saving overtime and skipping the vacation I'd promised myself. I walked to the gift table, found the white envelope with my handwriting, unsealed, untouched. I slipped it into my bag, turned, and headed for the exit. I was almost to the parking lot when I heard my daughter's voice behind me. I didn't stop. Not yet. Talia was 3 when the call came. A Tuesday morning just after sunrise. The kind of morning where the air still held onto the night heavy and damp. My husband Marcos was driving to work his usual shift at the distribution center. A drunk driver didn't see the red light. I don't remember much after that, except the sound of Talia's cereal crunching in the bowl as the officer told me I was a widow. After the funeral, everything changed. Grief didn't come with paid leave. I picked up shifts wherever I could, nursing homes, ER, overnights, home health weekends. I wore sneakers until the soles split and bought my scrubs secondhand from the discount bin at Mercy Uniforms. Birthdays were homemade cupcakes and paper crowns. Christmas was always something useful. Never magical, but never missing. We stayed in a 1-bedroom apartment until she was 10. I let her have the room. I slept on the pullout next to the heater that hissed all night long. When she needed braces, I canceled the trip I'd been planning to Yosemite. When she got into that charter middle school, I picked up a weekend job just to afford the new uniform code. People asked why I never remarried. I always said I only had room in my heart and budget for one priority. And that was true. I didn't have time for dating apps or small talk. My life was focused on getting her somewhere better. She was a bright girl, always had been. Loved books, memorized song lyrics after one listen. I still have a picture of her at 8 years old, reading under the table during a loud birthday party, legs crossed, totally immersed. It started to shift sometime after college. Subtle things. I'd call and she'd answer with a clipped, "Hey, Mom, I'm about to head out." I'd suggest lunch and she'd say her weekends were packed. Then one day, I saw photos on social media, her at brunch, all smiles with her college friends. I hadn't even known she was in town. I never asked why I wasn't invited. Maybe I didn't want to hear the answer. Once she introduced me to a friend as my mom. She's a nurse, like the practical kind, not the fancy degree type. It stung more than I let show. Still, I kept showing up. Birthdays, graduations, housewarming, always with a gift, always on time. I never thought I'd show up for her wedding and be told I didn't have a seat. But the signs had been there, I just refused to read them, until now. The first time I met Deborah Langston was over coffee at a wine bar she insisted on. I had suggested a diner closer to my place, somewhere casual, but she said, "We should meet where the wedding will feel at home," whatever that meant. She arrived in pressed white linen and a handbag that probably cost more than my car's monthly insurance. She smiled tight and thin and thanked me for covering the catering deposit. Then, without blinking, added, "How generous for someone on a nurse's salary." I laughed politely. I'd heard worse, but something in her tone made it clear I was tolerated, not welcomed. Still, I tried. I helped pick out floral arrangements. I transferred money quietly without asking for acknowledgement. When the vendor called about a hiccup with payment, I was the one who bridged the gap. Deborah said her funds were temporarily committed. I didn't ask what that meant. Talia called less in the months leading up to the wedding. When she did, it was all logistics. Seating charts, song lists, how she wanted the photographer to capture moments, not poses. I listened, offered support, but the warmth between us had cooled. Once, I asked if I'd be part of the toast lineup. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, "Oh, we're keeping speeches short." Too many voices gets messy. Her voice had that polished calm she used with strangers. I should have known. She wasn't cruel. Not directly. But there was always a sense that I was being moved further and further to the margins, like someone editing a document and slowly deleting sentences they no longer found necessary. When I brought up Deborah's tone, Talia brushed it off. "That's just how she is," she said. "She's trying in her own way." But I couldn't help noticing that whenever Deborah was around, Talia's posture changed. Straighter. Sharper. She became someone else. A week before the wedding, we met for lunch, her idea. I remember the sunlight hitting her engagement ring just right, catching reflections in the water glass. She looked so grown up, confident, untouchable. "Thank you again for everything, Mom," she said. "Really. We couldn't have done this without you." I smiled and told her I was proud. I meant it. Some part of me still believed that when the day came, she would make space for me. That whatever tension was forming around the edges, she'd pull me in when it mattered. I held on to that belief like it was rope, even as it started to fray. The ceremony had been lovely, short, soft-spoken, staged like a dream. Talia looked radiant in lace, her groom nervous and proud. I sat in the third-row aisle seat alone. I clapped at the vows, dabbed my eyes discreetly. No one looked my way, but I didn't expect them to. I'd told myself this wasn't about me. It wasn't until we arrived at the vineyard reception that something shifted. Guests gathered at a long check-in table under a floral archway. The woman in front of me received an envelope trimmed in gold, her name scripted in calligraphy across the front. A matching lanyard was handed over, clipped to a laminated pass that read "Family, Table 3. She smiled, slipped it over her neck, and stepped aside. Then it was my turn. The woman behind the table didn't smile, didn't ask my name. She reached into a cardboard box and pulled out a white paper badge, creased at the corner, printed in thick black block letters, "Limited Access Guest." She didn't offer a lanyard, just the paper. I stared at it for a second, unsure what to say. Then I heard heels clicking toward me. Deborah's perfume arrived before she did. She leaned in, lips curled upward. "That means no plate," she said quietly, and let out a small laugh, barely audible, but sharp enough to slice. Then she turned and disappeared into the chattering crowd. For a moment, I stood there holding the badge like it was something contagious. I looked down at it again, hoping maybe I'd misread it. But there it was, plain as anything. I walked toward the entrance, still clinging to some explanation. Maybe it was an error. Maybe I'd been given the wrong pass. I scanned the seating chart displayed on a large mounted easel. Table 1 Langston family, Table 2 bridal party, Table 3 college friends, Table 4 groom's relatives. My name wasn't listed, not even at the very bottom, not even under miscellaneous guests. I moved slowly into the hall. Servers in black vests floated past me with trays of sparkling wine and tiny hors d'oeuvres. No one offered me anything. No one met my eyes. I found a place near the back wall behind a column wrapped in fairy lights. From there, I could see the head table where Talia and her new husband were raising glasses, laughing. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. Cameras flashed. Someone cheered. I wondered if the florist she'd chosen knew that I'd paid their deposit. I slipped the badge into my purse. My palms were sweating. I thought I wasn't even background family. I was wallpaper. I stood there long enough for the first round of applause to rise, then fall. And then I turned toward the gift table. The gift table was tucked in a corner near the entrance, dressed in white linen, and scattered with envelopes and glossy bags, tied in ribbon. A framed sign read, "Your presence is the best gift, but we thank you for your generosity." I spotted my envelope instantly. It was the only one without a bow or gold seal. Plain white, my handwriting across the front. I'd placed it there myself that morning just before the ceremony began. No one had touched it. I picked it up, opened the flap, and slid the check out. $7,000. Signed, dated, the memo line still reading, "For your next chapter." I stood there holding it, the noise of the reception muffled behind me like I was underwater. I thought about the extra shifts I picked up, the night I stayed 18 hours straight because the hospital was short-staffed. The vacation I canceled, Hawaii, my first time planned to go just for me. I told myself there would be another year. I folded the check in half and whispered more to myself than anyone else, "I think you won't need this anymore." Then I turned and walked away. A few heads turned as I passed the foyer. Someone must have seen the envelope in my hand. I heard a murmur ripple through the entryway. Chairs scraped against the floor behind me. A voice called my name once, then again louder. Then came my daughter's voice. "Mom, wait." I didn't. I walked across the gravel path to the parking lot, my shoes crunching with each step. The vineyard lights glowed softly behind me, the sounds of music and clinking glasses chasing but never catching me. I opened the car door, slid into the seat, and placed the envelope beside me. My fingers trembled just a little as I turned the key. The engine sputtered, caught, held steady. In the rearview mirror, I caught a flash of movement. Talia, in her dress, standing just beyond the archway. Her mouth was open, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. She didn't look like a bride in that moment. She looked like a little girl again, unsure of what she'd done wrong. I backed out slowly, gave the vineyard one last glance, then turned down the winding road away from the celebration I'd been written out of. By the time I reached the highway, my phone started buzzing. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sky had turned the kind of blue that only shows up after you've been crying without tears. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car with the engine off my hands, still curled on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed again. The first message was from Talia. "Can we talk? Please don't make this into a thing. It's your day too." Then another, "I didn't know about the badge, I swear." Then from my sister, "Everyone's confused. People are asking where you went." But none of them said I'm sorry. Not one. Just noise, damage control. I didn't reply. I took a long shower, let the hot water run until my skin burned. The silence in the house was louder than the music I'd left behind. I dried off slowly, dressed in an old sweatshirt, and made tea just to have something warm to hold. By midnight, the messages stopped. No calls. Just that buzzing silence you can only hear when people realize they've messed up but can't say it out loud. Deborah, of course, didn't text at all. The next afternoon, I got a message from Joy, a friend of mine who works part-time for the event planner that handled the wedding. "Hey, I know this might be out of line, but I thought you should know. You were on the original seating chart." I called her. She sounded hesitant, like she was tiptoeing around glass. "They had you listed at the head family table," she said, "right next to Talia and the groom's parents." That was 3 weeks ago. What changed, I asked, though I already knew. There was an email update, she said. About 4 days before the wedding. "You were moved to overflow. It was Deborah's note, but..." And the final list had a green check mark next to Talia's name. That usually means she reviewed it. My stomach sank in a way that felt heavier than anger. It was clarity. Cold, still undeniable. Talia had known. Maybe not at first, maybe not with malice, but she'd seen it. She'd let it happen. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the check still inside my purse, untouched. I thought about every spelling test I stayed up helping her study for. Every parent-teacher night I worked overtime just to leave early. Every time I told her she could be anything. And somehow, She still believed I was the part she could leave out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there stunned by how simple the truth was. They hadn't expected me to find out. They hadn't thought I mattered enough to notice. I didn't respond for 3 days. Not to the texts, not to the voicemails, not to the carefully worded email from Talia's husband that landed in my inbox with the subject line, "Hope we can reconnect soon." I read it once, then deleted it. The quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. On the 4th day, Talia called. I let it ring twice before answering. She didn't start with a greeting. Her voice came through thick and shaky. "We can't book the honeymoon without that check, Mom. The deposit's due tomorrow." I said nothing. Let her fill the silence. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she continued. "It wasn't supposed to be like that. Deborah." She said the list was too full. "I didn't think it mattered where you sat." "You knew," I said flatly. A pause. "I didn't think you'd care." That part stung more than I expected. Not the exclusion, not the badge that she thought I was used to being overlooked. "I cared enough to leave," I said. She didn't argue, just sniffled softly on the other end. "If I ever give again," I said slowly, "it won't be a gift. It'll come with terms. Written terms. Signatures. Timelines. And conditions. Mom, I'm serious." Another pause. "Okay," she whispered. I hung up. That night I sat with the check in front of me, a pen in my hand. I considered writing a new one, maybe even attaching a formal agreement. Make it a loan. Something legal, cold, protected. But then I thought about how no one ever offered me contracts when I paid the florist. No one offered me courtesy when I showed up at that vineyard. No one thought I'd walk away because I never had before. Why should they get grace when they'd never offered me the same? I drafted a message on my phone. "I've decided to help. Let's meet and go over paperwork." I stared at it. My thumb hovered over send. Then I hit delete. Silence would say more than that message ever could. That night I slept through without waking once. No dreams. No heartache pressing on my chest. Just rest. The next morning my phone lit up again. This time it was a message from Deborah. "We'd like to move forward with the honeymoon plans. Can you confirm your support?" The word sat in my throat like a stone. I didn't answer. I closed the message and opened the back door instead, stepping out into the cool morning. The sky was soft and gray, the kind that promises nothing but honesty. I stood there for a long while, watching the wind shift the branches, letting the silence do what it does best. Hold everything they thought I'd give without question. My birthday came and went without a call. Not from Talia. Not from anyone who shared my blood. I didn't expect balloons or surprises, but I thought she might at least send a message. Something short, something polite. But the day stayed quiet. I ordered my favorite meal from the Thai place down the road, extra spicy, just how I liked it, and ate it on the porch while the sun dipped behind the hills. The silence didn't ache the way it used to. It was steady, peaceful, and for once mine. I'd left the family group chat days earlier. No goodbye, no explanation. Just slipped out the back door of that thread and never looked back. No one asked why. I figured they knew. Around 8:30, my phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Lena, Talia's sister-in-law. I just wanted to say what they did at the wedding wasn't okay. You deserved better." I read it twice. Then again, I typed out a simple reply. "Thank you for saying that." She responded, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The next morning, I pulled on gloves and went into the garden. There was a small patch near the fence that had sat empty since winter. I cleared it out, turned the soil, and planted tulip bulbs. Deep purple ones, the kind Talia used to call princess flowers when she was little. I didn't plant them for her. I planted them for the version of me that had always waited for permission to be seen. Letting go didn't happen in one moment. It was a slow unraveling of old hopes, silent expectations, and the stories I'd told myself for years. There was no final showdown, no dramatic apology over coffee, just silence. A silence that for once didn't feel like punishment, but release. They didn't chase me down, not really. Maybe they assumed I'd come around like I always had. Maybe they thought time would soften me. But time didn't soften anything. It clarified. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want an apology carved out of guilt or obligation. I just wanted the dignity of being treated like I mattered, and when that was denied, I gave it to myself. They wanted the gift, not the giver. They got neither. And I'm okay with that. Better than okay. I wake up now without checking my phone for apologies that were never coming. I sit in my garden watching the first tulips push through the dirt, and I feel whole in a way I hadn't known I was missing. The cost of peace was their approval. I paid it gladly. I don't know what comes next for them, but I know what comes next for me. Stillness, strength, and space to grow. Some doors don't need to be slammed shut. They just need to be locked from the inside.